The day I found out, I was sitting in my mother's hospital room holding her hand, watching the machines breathe for her. And my brother, my own brother, was in the parking lot, on the phone with her lawyer, changing her will. I didn't know that yet. I just thought he'd stepped out for coffee. I want you to sit with that for a second, because that's the part that still makes my chest go hollow when I think about it. Not the money, not the house, not the 23 acres of land our grandfather built from nothing. It's that while I was holding her hand and telling her I loved her, he was already dividing her up. Welcome to Big Sky Storytime. I hope you will like this story. Before listening to the story, I request you that if you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel and make the video a worthy one. Let's go to the story. My name is Marlene Cates. I'm 51 years old. I grew up in Hargrove, Ohio, in a house that smelled like cinnamon and motor oil, raised by a mother who could stretch a dollar until it begged for mercy, and a father who fixed other people's transmissions for 30 years without ever once complaining. We weren't rich, but we had something better than rich. We had enough, and we had each other. Or so I believed. My brother Dennis is 4 years older than me. Growing up, he was my hero, genuinely. He taught me to ride a bike in the church parking lot. He drove me to prom when my date backed out. He called me every Sunday for 15 years after we both left home, and those calls were the rhythm of my adult life. Dennis had a loudness to him, a brightness, the kind of man who fills a room just by being in it. He could make you feel like the most important person in the world when he was paying attention to you. The problem, I would learn, is that kind of charm tends to be practiced, intentional, a tool. He'd had money trouble for years. I knew that in a vague way, the way you know things about family that you don't want to examine too closely. A restaurant that closed, a real estate deal that went sideways, a divorce that cost him. But Dennis always bounced back, or at least he appeared to. He had the confidence of a man who had never truly lost anything, which, I would later understand, meant he had always found someone else to absorb the loss. Our mother, Eleanor Cates, was 81 years old when she had her first stroke. It was a Tuesday in September, and I was the one who found her in the kitchen floor of the house we grew up in. I was the one who called 911. I was the one who moved back into that house, back to Hargrove, temporarily, which became permanently, to take care of her, while Dennis sent cards and called on birthdays. I left my apartment in Columbus. I left my job at the University Press. I put my entire life into a storage unit and I drove back home, because that's what you do. That's what love looks like when it's not performing. Mom held on better than anyone expected. 2 years of slow recovery, some physical therapy, a stubborn refusal to use a walker until she absolutely had to. I cooked for her and drove her to appointments and watched game shows with her in the evenings and read to her when her eyes got tired. It was hard, of course it was hard, but it was also the 2 most honest years of my life. Dennis visited 4 times in those 2 years, 4 times, and every time he came he had this energy about him, restless, a little too attentive to Mom, too curious about what the doctors were saying, too interested in the filing cabinet in the study where Dad's old paperwork lived. I noticed it. I told myself I was being paranoid. That's the thing about loving someone. You give them the benefit of the doubt so many times it becomes a reflex. The second stroke hit her on a Thursday night in March. I was right there. I rode in the ambulance with her and stayed at the hospital through the night and the next morning and the afternoon. Dennis drove in from Pittsburgh the following day. He was warm and concerned, and he brought flowers, and he cried, which I hadn't seen him do in years. He stepped out around 4 in the afternoon, said he needed air. He was gone for 2 hours. I thought nothing of it. My mother's hand was cooling. I thought nothing of it. She died on a Saturday morning, gentle and quiet, with me beside her. Dennis was in the room too, and I remember being grateful for that. Grateful that we could grieve together, that whatever distance life had put between us, this moment was shared. I held on to that. I held on to the idea of us as a family, 2 grown children orphaned on a gray Ohio morning, bonded by loss. I should have known something was wrong at the funeral. Dennis took over the arrangements entirely, which seemed like generosity at the time. He managed the caterers and the flowers and coordinated with the church. He stood at the front and told stories about Mom that made everyone laugh and cry. He was magnificent, honestly. He was so magnificent that I didn't notice he never once consulted me on anything, that he had already spoken to her attorney, a man named Gerald Fitch, twice before we even buried her. The will reading was 3 weeks later. I drove to Gerald Fitch's office in a strip mall off Route 30, wearing my mother's pearl earrings because it felt right. Dennis was already there when I arrived, leaning against his car in a way that looked casual but wasn't. He gave me a long hug. He smelled like the same cologne he'd worn since college. Gerald Fitch was a small, precise man with bifocals and a voice like a recorded message. He read the document without inflection or drama, and it took me a full 30 seconds after the words landed to understand what they meant. The house, the property, the savings account that my parents had built over 50 years of careful living, everything with the exception of a few personal items left to me had been directed into a trust managed exclusively by Dennis, with the instruction that the property could not be sold or transferred for a period of 10 years, during which Dennis would draw a management fee for his services as trustee. I sat very still. The will had been amended 6 weeks before my mother's death. 6 weeks, when she was already weakened, already on medications that affected her cognition, when I had been her primary caregiver and hadn't seen a single attorney, a single document, a single conversation about changing anything. I looked at Dennis. He was studying the window. His jaw was set in a way I recognized, a way that meant he had already moved past the moment he was sitting in, had already arranged the future in his head, was just waiting for the present to catch up. "Dennis," I said. "Marlene," he said, gently, like I was a child who had just been told something disappointing but fair. "Did you know about this?" He turned and looked at me with a face of practiced sorrow. "Mom and I had a lot of conversations toward the end," he said. "She had concerns about long-term management, about making sure the property stayed in the family." "I am the family," I said. "I was there every day for 2 years. I was in that house every single day." "And that was wonderful," he said. "It really was." I drove home in silence. I sat in the driveway of my mother's house, the house I was now technically a guest in, and I did not go inside for a very long time. Here is what I did not do. I did not call Dennis and scream at him. I did not post anything on Facebook. I did not show up at Gerald Fitch's office in tears or fury or both. I did not tell anyone what had happened, not even my closest friend, Deborah, who called that evening and could tell something was wrong and let me say, "I'm fine, just tired," without pushing. I sat in that driveway and I thought. And that, in the end, is what Dennis never accounted for. He had known me for 51 years, and he still thought of me as the little sister, the soft one, the one who made casseroles and held hands and felt her way through the world with her heart rather than her head. He did not know, had never bothered to find out, that I had spent 15 years at a university press acquiring and editing non-fiction books, many of them on topics like estate law, financial fraud, elder care litigation, and forensic accounting. He did not know that I had read those books carefully. He did not know that I was, quietly, very good at understanding complicated systems and finding the places where they broke down. He thought he had won. He had not thought about what happens after someone decides they have nothing left to lose. The first thing I did was drive to the public library in Hargrove and use their computer to begin researching undue influence in estate law. Undue influence is when someone in a position of power over a vulnerable person, an elderly person, a person with diminished capacity, manipulates that person into changing legal documents in the manipulator's favor. It is a recognized legal concept. Courts have overturned wills on this basis. I read everything I could find. Then I called an elder law attorney in Columbus named Patricia Osei, who had written one of the books I had edited 4 years earlier. I'd worked closely with her on the manuscript. She remembered me. I told her what had happened, calmly and completely, and there was a long pause on the line. "How soon can you come in?" she said. Here is what Patricia and I built together over the following 4 months, quietly, methodically, without Dennis ever once suspecting anything was happening.
We obtained my mother's medical records from the final 8 weeks of her life, records that clearly documented the medications she was on, the cognitive assessments administered by her care team, and the notations from 3 different nurses that she had exhibited confusion, disorientation, and difficulty retaining information during that period. One nurse had written in her chart, "Patient unable to recall conversation from earlier in the day, shows signs of temporal confusion." We obtained phone records, my mother's landline, that showed 12 calls to Dennis's cell number in the 6 weeks before the will amendment. My mother, who had never been much of a phone person, who would go 2 weeks without calling her own children and then apologize for it. We tracked down Gerald Fitch's assistant, a young woman named Keeley, who had left the firm 3 months after my mother's will was amended. Keeley, it turned out, had been troubled by the circumstances of that amendment. She had been troubled enough to keep a copy of the appointment log and a handwritten note she'd made at the time. Client appeared uncertain, asked who trustee would be 3 times, was told by accompanying party. The accompanying party, logged in Keeley's notes, was Dennis. My mother had not gone to that attorney's office alone. Patricia filed a formal legal challenge to the will on the grounds of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. Dennis was served on a Thursday afternoon. Patricia's assistant told me it was delivered to his office, the new office in Pittsburgh, the one he'd opened with what I now understood was borrowed momentum, a man buying time. I know exactly what moment he opened the envelope, because he called me 11 seconds after the courier left. "What is this?" he said. Not angry, confused, like a man who has bumped into a wall that wasn't supposed to be there. "It's a legal challenge," I said. "You should have your attorney look at it." "Marlene," his voice shifted into the warm register, the tone he used when he wanted to manage people. "Let's talk about this. Let's sit down and work this out like adults, like family." "I am working it out," I said. "That's what this is. You're going to destroy everything. You're going to drag Mom's name through a lawsuit. I'm going to prove that you drove our mother, a sick, medicated 81-year-old woman, to an attorney's office and told her to put in charge of everything she owned while I was sitting in a hospital room holding her hand." My voice was very steady. I had practiced being steady for 4 months. "Dennis, ask your attorney what the words undue influence mean for a trustee's legal standing." He hung up.
The case did not go to trial. I want to be clear about that. Not because it was weak, but because Dennis's attorney apparently explained to him, quickly and with some urgency, that the evidence we had assembled made a trial a very bad idea. The medical records alone were damaging. Keeley's statement was devastating, and there were financial records that Patricia had subpoenaed from Gerald Fitch's office showing that Dennis had paid the attorney's fee for the will amendment himself out of his own account, which is not illegal on its face, but is a remarkable thing to do when the will amendment primarily benefits you. We settled in mediation on a cold Tuesday in February, 14 months after my mother died. The revised arrangement was this: the property would be placed in a shared trust, co-managed by both siblings and an independent third-party trustee appointed by the court. Dennis's management fee was eliminated. Any sale of the property would require agreement from both parties, and Dennis paid my legal fees, every cent, because Patricia had argued, successfully, that I would never have needed to hire an attorney if not for his actions. We sat across a conference table from each other, Dennis and I, for the first time since Gerald Fitch's office. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, he still had that size to him, that presence, but something in the scaffolding had shifted. He had spent 14 months believing that his sister was the soft one, the one who would grieve quietly and eventually accept whatever she was given. He signed the agreement without speaking. When it was done, I stood up and gathered my coat and my bag, and I looked at my brother across that table, and for a moment I thought about everything we had been to each other, the bike riding and the prom and the Sunday phone calls, and the man who had cried in our mother's hospital room, and I felt something that wasn't satisfaction and wasn't grief, but was somewhere in the middle, a kind of accurate sorrow. "I didn't do this for the money," I said. He looked up. "I did it because she trusted me, and because she deserved better than what you decided she was worth in the end." I walked out of that conference room and into the Ohio February, and I stood on the sidewalk in the cold for a minute and breathed.
I still live in Hargrove. I went back to part-time work consulting for a small legal publisher out of Cleveland, which I do from the kitchen table of the house I grew up in, the house that still smells faintly of cinnamon if you walk in after being away for a few days. The 23 acres are still there. I walk them sometimes in the evenings when the light goes long and gold across the fields, and I think about my grandfather who built this from nothing, and my father who kept it, and my mother who loved it with a plainness and a permanence that I understand better now than I did when I was young. Dennis and I don't speak. I don't know if we ever will again. Some doors, once you understand what was on the other side of them, you choose not to reopen. That's not bitterness, it's accuracy. It's knowing the difference between a relationship and a performance of one. What I know is this: there is a version of me who sat in that driveway and cried and called her brother and begged for an explanation and accepted whatever was given to her and told herself it was fine. Family is complicated. Let it go. There is a version of me who disappeared quietly into someone else's story. I am not that version. I took 4 months and built something careful and true out of medical records and phone logs and the testimony of a young woman who had been bothered by something she witnessed and didn't know what to do with it. I built it without rage and without performance. I built it the way my mother would have built anything, with patience, with precision, and with the quiet understanding that justice is not a feeling, it's a structure, and structures take time. People ask me sometimes if I regret how it ended, if I wish Dennis and I had found another way through. I tell them the truth. I tell them I regret what he did, not what I did. And there's a difference, a real, important, load-bearing difference between those two things. The land is still in the family. My mother's wish for that, at least, was real. I honor it by being there, by staying, by walking those fields in the evening light and remembering that she raised 2 children in that house, and one of them turned out to be exactly who she needed them to be. I used to think strength was something you were born with or you weren't. I understand now that it's something you find in the moment you decide you are not going to accept the version of events that someone else wrote for you. It's the moment you pick up a pen. They thought I was broken by grief. They thought a woman who brought casseroles and held hands and wept in hospital rooms was a woman they could move around the board like a piece they controlled. They never once stopped to consider that I'd spent 15 years learning how the game was really played. And when it mattered most, I played it better than anyone in that room. If you like this story of mine, please leave a nice comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.